Welcome to my online studio. In today's episode, it's alternate tunings and how they can open a Pandora's box of new ideas and creativity. I remember when I was learning to play guitar, it wasn't long before I started experimenting with alternate tunings. I remember going to a concert very early on and listening to a guitarist, and he told me he was playing in DADGAD tuning and that it was great because you could play lots and lots of chords with just one finger, and that sounded exciting for me as an early guitarist. But also a lot of my influences in music were using unusual tunings, people like Michael Hedges and Joni Mitchell. In fact, Joni Mitchell came up with her own system of describing her tunings for her different songs using a numbering system, which I'll get to in a minute. But the first question you might ask is, why would you change the tuning on your guitar? I mean, really, you've got all the notes there underneath your fingers. Why would you need to change the open strings to play anything? Well, you don't, but open strings sound different to a fretted string, and you can also play chord voicings that would be completely impossible in normal tuning. One of the great things that you can do is be playing up the neck using notes that will be just a tone or a semitone away from an open string, and you get these beautiful ringing harp-like sounds, and that's something that is characteristic of an open-tuned guitar. So let's jump right in with our first tuning. Okay, this one is a bit of a cheat because it's standard tuning. It's the normal tuning that your guitar would be in, E, A, D, G, B, E. You could think of that as an open chord if you wanted to. It could be an E minor 7 add 4. But really the reason I wanted to show you playing in a normal tuning is to talk about how someone who might think about open tunings would use the strings in a normal tuned guitar. So rather than just playing in a block position where all the fingers are down and not really worrying about where the open strings are, really paying attention to which strings are the open strings, making a melody or playing a melody that uses those. E, A, D, G, and B are the notes of the E minor pentatonic scale, and they're also the notes of the G major pentatonic scale. So that's extremely handy. And if you're in a key that doesn't use them, use a capo. There is the joke amongst guitarists that capo comes from the Italian word capotasto, meaning to cheat. But it's not cheating, it's just a way of using the instrument. You get the capo doing the work for you, and then you can focus on fluidity, creativity. You don't have to go any further than Tony Rice for hearing how you can increase your fluidity of your phrases by using open strings. He's an amazing bluegrass flat picker, and he'll be playing in a C position or a G position and have a capo so that he can be in those positions in whatever key the song is in. And then he uses hammer-ons and pull-offs to make these lines just flow out of his guitar. Another person that's done that very well on a nylon string is Doug DeVries. He wrote a tune called Hummingbird, which is in E minor, and the melody uses a lot of open strings. In fact, it's almost hammering on or pulling off onto or from an open string every other note, which is the only way you can really play this song. It's that fast. This melody has all these open strings in it. Then you can use all these open string ideas to get these beautiful flowing lines that you would otherwise have to play every single one of them on a fret. Okay, now we are in a different alternate tuning. This guitar is currently tuned to DADGAD, D-A-D-G-A-D. D on the bottom, so down a tone, and then A, D, G, like a normal guitar. And then the top two, A and D, so the top two are down a tone. If you had an electronic tuner, then yeah, you can just tune each one to be that note. But maybe it's time to introduce the Joni Mitchell way of describing these tunings. Tune the bottom string, in this case to a D, and then use this numbering system to get all of the rest of the notes. So normally when you would tune a guitar, you would tune from the 5th fret to line up with the next open string, with one exception obviously, going from the G to the B. So we'll do that same idea, but with an open tuning. So we'll start with the D on the 7th fret to get the A. And then A to D is 5th fret. 5th fret again to get the G. 2nd fret. And then 5th fret. So Joni would write that 7, 5, 5, 2, 5. It's a really useful way of checking the tuning, but also getting into that tuning in the first place if you're not familiar with the names of the notes, or if you don't have an electronic tuner with you. DADGAD tuning is a favourite of people like Tony McManus and Pierre Bensoussan, countless folk and Celtic guitar players, because of its versatility for playing modal music, or music that could be in a major or a minor key. If you compare this tuning to a normal open D tuning, which has an F sharp in it, it has a major third in the open strings, that note there. So if you're playing in a minor key, you've got to keep avoiding that string over and over again. In this case, there is no major or minor note. It's all 1s, 5s and 4s. So with one finger you can turn it into a big D5 chord, into a major add 4 chord, or a minor add 4 chord, and all sorts of other possibilities. So it's a really versatile tuning, and I know guitarists who will use this tuning exclusively, and a lot of their melodies are based around a moving chord melody idea, where you can use the bass string as your bass note, and then another string follows that bass note around. So you're basically walking up and down the notes of the scale, but 2 notes at a time. And all those extra open ringing strings keep it centered in this D sound, even though you're moving the bass note around. As I said before, it's great for Celtic music, so I'll give you an example of some Celtic music played on DADGAD. This is a tune called Banish Misfortune. But there is no reason that you should be limiting yourself to playing in D when you're in DADGAD tuning. There's lots of ways of using these open strings, but not as the 1, the 5 and the 4 of your key center. You could, for example, have F as your root note, and then the other strings, 6, and a 2. They're nice notes, so you can use those in your melody. On my first album, I've got a tune called It's Summer in Europe, and I was inspired by the way that Pierre Bensoussan in particular uses DADGAD tuning, but it doesn't sound like it's always in D. So this tune started with the idea of me playing standard chord shapes in DADGAD just to see how they sounded. Here's what a C chord sounds like. Here's what a B flat major 7 sounds like. So I use those ideas to make a piece of music, and it's in F, but I don't actually play the F chord until the very end of the piece. Okay, this 335 is currently tuned to open A. This is essentially the same as an open G tuning, but upper tone. And the reason I did that was to get some extra tension on the strings so that I can play slide without them pushing down against the frets too much. It's much more common to be tuning down to open G than it is to tune up to open A. But if you use Joni Mitchell's tuning system, as long as you start on the right note, everything else works the same. So I've got my bottom string here tuned to an E, and then the rest just falls into place. So it'll be E, A, C sharp, E. Or if you like, 5, 7, 5, 4, 3. This is a favourite tuning of a lot of the old blues players like John Lee Hooker and Elmore James, Muddy Waters, Johnny Winter. It's great for playing slide. It's great for that situation where you do want the minor and the major third hanging around, as in the case of blues. Keith Richards famously uses this tuning a lot on a 5-string guitar, so he gets rid of this bottom D or E note so that he can strum all the rest of the strings. I won't play any particular Rolling Stones tunes because my video will be taken down. I was taught open G tuning by my first guitar teacher, Chris Finnan. This is back 25 years ago. And the first thing he ever taught me was a tune by Abdullah Ibrahim, or Dollar Brand, called African Marketplace. I saw him perform this piece and went up to him straight after the gig and said, I need to learn that piece of music. So what better way to demonstrate open G, open A tuning than to play African Marketplace? An alternative version of open G tuning is what you might typically find on a resonator guitar like this. And it's GBD, GBD. This tuning is particularly great for slide guitar players because you have a major third triad in the bottom half of the guitar, so you can get some really nice sounding low chords. But also you've got lots of options for where to find intervals because we're playing with a bar, so you want to find places on a fret where you have two notes that are the right distance apart for the melody you want to play. So in this tuning, the top two strings are a minor third apart. The next two strings are a major third apart. The next two strings are a fourth apart. So 3 frets apart, 4 frets apart, and 5 frets apart. That's really handy. It means you can find what interval you might need reasonably close at hand. One thing I love playing on the Dobro is using open strings while using the bar on other strings. So the open strings will add extra color tones that you can't find just using the bar alone. Things like this, for example, an F6 chord. And then you go down to here, E flat major 7. And one of my favorites, an A sharp 11 chord. So lots of extra beautiful sounds that you can get using some open strings along with a bar's worth of notes. But then you can also go the complete opposite direction and ignore the intervals between the strings and play on one string like you might do in Indian music. And that lends itself to all sorts of other melodic ideas. Okay, a new tuning and 6 extra strings. I've now got my 12 string, and this one is tuned to a C modal scale. So it's C, G, C, G, C, F. This has all the advantages of DADGAD tuning in that it's a modal tuning. There's no major or minor thirds, so you can play in either major or minor. But it also has the added bonus of a bottom C. It's very similar to how my sitar is tuned. The sitar has the main playing string tuned to the 4th, or the F in the case of the key of C. So all the melodies that I would play on a sitar, I can play on this top string using the other strings as a drone. I'll play a very old composition of mine in this tuning. This is a piece that I performed in Adelaide when I was supporting a band called the Sympathy Orchestra. and one of my friends in that band, Ray Smith, had his 2 sons with him. And they came up to me after my set and said, I really like that tune you did on the 12-string. What's it called? And I said, doesn't have a name yet. How about I name it after you? So I called it Gypsy and Tam. Now, of course, open tunings aren't just for guitarists. This violin I've currently got tuned to G-D-A-D. And the reason I've done that is for playing Indian music in particular. My sitar is currently tuned to D, and I play a lot of Indian music in the key of D, so this now has 2 Ds. And the 5th, the A, sitting in the middle of them, and I've got a little 4th sitting on the bottom. So lots of modal options there, because you don't have any major thirds, minor thirds, or other color notes in the open strings, which means you can choose whether or not to play them. So you can use these 2 D strings to play a call and response with yourself. You send a message out on one string and you answer it on the other. You can also use the 2 D strings as a pedal note or a drone note to then play melodies over the top. So lots of fun. I hope I've inspired you to change the tuning on your instrument and get some new ideas out of it. In fact, play the ideas you already have on that unusually tuned instrument and see what notes you get, and that might give you some new ideas. I hope you've enjoyed watching this tutorial. I release a new video every Monday, so subscribe to my channel if you like. Leave a message in the comments, in particular if you have a topic that you think you'd like me to cover in a future episode. Thanks for watching.